to the stage.
The chocolate. Sounds like fun.
Hey. Just flushed everyone.
Banana.
Hello everyone.
Hello, Tyler.
As you might know, my name is Tyler. As you might,
I'm also Tyler.
Hello,
Yeah.
Tyler.
tonight we'll be
Know that.
You guys' names are Tyler? I thought it was Henry.
So tonight we'll be speaking to you about the idea of identifying emotions as part of our series that we've been doing on talking. Thank you, James. Let us begin. Hello, welcome to the fifth night of our talking series. Tonight, Tyler and I will be discussing the letter I, which means identifying in this circumstance. Now, who can guess what the letter I means exactly when we say identifying? Zeke.
Conversation.
Finding out what it is.
So identifying.
Identifying conversations.
Identifying conversations. Do we have anything else? Rory.
Could be identifying different ways that you can deal with emotions.
Or body language.
Body language. You might be right, who knows? If you look at the word talking, you'll see the part of the words talk and ing. And the point I'm trying to make here is that that's how the past four answers have been. It's T-A-L-K for talk, and ing is like the second half. First half is telling, archiving, listening, and knowing. They greatly tie into tonight's identifying assets because they all relate back to tonight. To properly identify our emotions, you must be able to tell somebody about them, as well as speak them out clearly. It might make them easier to deal with. Archive them so that you know how to store them and you can work on them later if you need to. Listen to them. Not always the best thing to do, but always something good to do if that is something that you need to do. Is worded well. And knowing about them, which links into last week's asset, which was you must know what you're dealing with, before you can manage to identify it, otherwise you don't know what you're looking at. Now, identifying emotions is a very important thing to be able to do, because it is something you'll have to be doing your entire life, whether it's your own emotions or the emotions of those around you. Learning how to accurately define these emotions is also another thing to do. Another interpretation of the word in this context would be to...
Okay.
Think about what you're saying and then say it when in your own time.
Another interpretation for the word in this context would be that you also have to identify what is actually a suitable emotion for a certain scenario. Example, say you're feeling one of these emotions on the screen here. Oh, lovely. Let's say you're feeling one of these, you might have to decide when is a good time to use what. Now, as you can see, there's a lot, but let's go with sad first. Sad leads to depressed and then inferior on this. So I'll start with sad, which is the feeling of unhappiness. It's a fairly simple one. You look at the emotion wheel, next you'll see is depressed up there. It basically has the same description as sad, but you'll feel it on a deeper level and it has more of an effect on you as a person. Lastly in this line is inferior, which sounds like a pretty strong word and means things along the lines of second class and not very important. You'll begin to see the point I'm making after these next three words. Powerful, respected, and worthwhile, which is in the green at the bottom. The very definition of powerful is to have great power or strength. But we can break that down to the next part, which is respect, which is to be admired. Lastly, worthwhile at the bottom there, which is something that is worth the time, money, or effort spent on something of value and importance. I could try to keep going and give the description on all of them, but the point I'm trying to make here is that for every feeling and emotion you have, it isn't just the base emotion of the middle three in there. You can span out and you might be feeling any one of these several things at once, anytime. And it might give you a different feeling, thus therefore a different way to tackle with the negative emotions would be required. Anyway, I'll get back to that part after a story. So who's ever been in a car and the person who's driving has ever hit like an animal on the side of the road or something? How did that make you feel?
Bless.
Less? What was that said? Someone
I was
said?
kind of...
It scared me.
So shocked.
Moderately shocked, considering it was a flying bird that hit the windscreen.
Yeah, that would be fairly shocking.
Yeah.
Well, one day back in my first semester at uni, one of the girls, we'd separated into our class groups, and one of our members was kind of upset, but she wasn't really saying anything about it. We didn't really know what was going on until she sort of cracked and she just started crying. Nobody really knew what was going on, but we asked her, started asking a million questions at once, seeing what we could do to help her. The basic problem was while driving home one night, her boyfriend had indeed hit an animal and he killed it. It was all fine at the time, but that was mostly due to shock that she was feeling okay, and as it all happened, it all came down on her the next day. This was a fairly poorly way of dealing with a stressful event, since she basically didn't deal with it all until it was too late, as it all happened whether she was prepared to or not. This is a good example of what can go wrong if you allow your emotions to bottle up and...
Oh, let me just cut in there, Tyler. And simmer, like a brooding teenager who is unsure where they fit in with society. If in this scenario, we are the parents, then we can continue to raise them with all the knowledge that has been passed to us. If we have felt like we have done all that we can, that they will understand their own morals and know the difference between wrong and right, they should grow up to be a kind and gentle soul, who values others and is willing to help them identify their emotions.
See, now, like I said just after the story, I'll get back to what I was just saying. So the story I was telling you about earlier, it's a bad example of how things can go wrong. Oh no, it's a good example of how things can go wrong. A better way to deal with something stressful like that would be to talk with someone, leading it back into the first part of the series. Just speaking your mind can provide a really cathartic feeling, or catharsis. Does anybody know what this means? Catharsis? Cathartic? Well, definition here.
Antarctic?
Cathartic is an action which gives you a large amount of psychological relief through openly expressing your thoughts and emotions. So, again, it's another good thing to have, to do. This is the answer to the story, but what about the answer to some of the points I mentioned earlier? The ones about emotions and identifying. Well, let's take sad again as an example. You can already see where it is, nice in the purple here. Because it's a fairly common emotion, and we've all experienced it at least once, I would imagine. Now, sad branches out to guilty, ashamed, depressed, lonely, bored, sad, and tired. Now, even though all of these goes under the sad section of the chart, how many of these actually relate to sadness directly? Do you always have to feel sad when you feel bored?
No. No,
You
you
always
feel
have to-
happy.
Do you always have to feel sad when you feel lonely? Could just be alone. Anyway, what do you think on this, Tyler?
Well, I'm glad you said that, Tyler. So, about a week ago, I'm not sure if, majority of you were here, but we had the blindfolded wheelbarrow game. Does anyone remember that?
Yeah!
Yeah? Do you remember what happened to me?
No.
No?
You
Okay.
killed yourself last.
Well, basically, I ended up with a concussion. I smashed my head into this wonderful piece of furniture right here. Yeah, that was great. I didn't even know the damage until I got into the car. Prior to that, I was very exuberant and energetic. Once I got into the car, though, I bawled my eyes out, and I had no idea why I was feeling this way.
Bless you.
The knocking to my head rattled the emotions to surface the more impending and immediate feelings. My body needed a release, and it did it by leaking from my eyes. As majority of you may know by now, as we were introduced, I'm Tyler, and this is also Tyler. But my name is spelt a bit differently to majority of Tyler's, and it's spelt Tylah. And this was kind of due because my mum wanted to sing, but that is beside the point. Anyway, we all have names, and some of us have the same or similar ones, and so we can relate to one another on this level. This is like emotions. We may have the same emotions or the same basis of them, but we may all experience them in a slightly different way. We can all relate to them, we can all relate with one another because we are human, and emotions are natural, so we all experience them. Now, I want you to imagine traffic. We all get frustrated by having to wait in line, gradually our patience fading away. But just think for a second, instead of us being the passengers or the drivers of the cars, they are inside our heads and they represent our emotions. And so when we experience something emotional, it is the surge and release of the brakes on the cars, allowing them to roam free and cause havoc. And without traffic lights or any sort of monitoring of the cars, what do?
Crash.
They crash, thank you. That's right, but not all emotions can be beneficial. The most common potentially harmful emotion would be anger.
What?
Still referring to the cars,
Rage.
imagine that anger is that P-plater that thinks that he is above the law, turning corners to avoid what us responsible people do by following the rules, and they execute a U-turn where it's not permitted, and they end up at the back of the line. I imagine this as not being properly identified and stopped, or at least been put in check, and so this is what bottling up would be, and eventually they would get a little too cocky and end up crashing with the other emotions. And crashing is an analogy of an outburst. To properly do anything, we would need to call in some help, because without the proper guidance, we wouldn't know the first thing to do. We call the police and they find the troublemakers, whether that be an immediate danger or a potential one. It is still worth knowing so we can keep an eye out for it, or just lock it up and then deal with it when we are
If
ready.
you try to find me, I'll take my hand away.
In traffic, there are 3 different coloured lights. Green, which means a calm, cool and controlled emotion, such as being content. Amber would be like anxious or on edge, an emotion that could go either way, good or bad. Red, a negative, aggressive emotion, which could be potentially self-harming, and that could also be potentially dangerous to oneself or the people around them. In life, we experience all these colours, and how we choose to react influences the outcome of many situations in life. We travel along the road of life, and inevitably we will encounter traffic lights. Green is when we're allowed to go, a calm emotion. Amber, there is 2 types of people. Either they will speed through, or they will remain calm and wait for it to turn green again. Red is aggressive, and the stubborn emotion. That is, if this emotion were to speed through the lights, it would be catastrophic and very dangerous. Other times, we may put in all the efforts to protect ourselves and others, but we still need to keep an eye out for the other drivers, as they are also a potential risk and threat that could cause you to crash and create a domino effect, spinning out of control and would result in another outburst. On the busy traffic-filled roads, consisting of all different traffic lights, situations and drivers, being able to control your own emotions to keep yourself in a green light mindset is very important. Taking a moment to pull over and assess the way you're feeling. Not only that, but take a moment to understand the drivers around you and learn from them to further help yourself. Step into the position of the other drivers, red, amber and green, to slip into their shoes and experience things from their eyes and assess the situation and find the source of the problem. Become aware about how you feel and accept it. All emotions are natural and can be related by almost everyone. People understand exactly what you're going through. You don't want to hide your emotions. Some of us, yes, we do, and that's what bottling up is. But for the sake of us and others around us, we need to let some of that out gradually to prevent an outburst and hurt people around us or ourselves. We need to identify why you feel the way you do, but you also need to express these feelings and emotions. Majority of us are people pleasers, and so we suppress to prevent hurting others. This usually leads to phobias, anxiety, and even depression. We may also, as a result, develop pessimistic and negative outlooks on life. By becoming in touch with your emotions, you are free to express them and will probably feel more energetic, as people with suppressed emotions tend to be more lethargic. Emotions are contagious. If you spend time with people who are enthusiastic and excited, you're more likely to feel the same way. But you are also as equally likely to be depressed and upset if you spend time hanging around with depressed and upset people. Now this is where you pull out your phone and take down Tyler's top tips. Here we go. Are you ready? Are we all ready? We've got our devices out.
Where is my device?
Yep, thank you. Alright. So, the first one is to talk it out. It is very beneficial to confide in someone that you trust. Someone that trusts you and someone that can help you with your situation. Sometimes, just talking to someone, getting it out there in the open and letting yourself be raw and open to help can be a great relief. Write it out. Communicate to others through paper or an email. Any way of letting it out is healthy and can make you feel a great amount of relief. Burn the piece of paper or whatever makes you experience the most amount of joy. And the last one, discharge sadness and anger. For instance, watch a sad movie. Listen to music that will incentivize releasing stress in screaming and crying. It's always healthy to cry or yell to release. So as we go into PAX tonight, I want you to think about cars and how they are emotions and how they affect us and others around us. Have a good night and thank you.